what company, like we know in cars, PSA,
Yep.
Beckett, and we know who grades comic books. What companies grade video games, and kind of what is the grading scale there?
So there are currently two companies who grade video games. There's Weta Games, who's actually under the Collectors Universe umbrella. So they're in the same building as PSA.
Okay.
And then there's a company out of Atlanta that's called VGA, and their parent company is AFA. Diamond, which is a distributor for comic books, just acquired VGA and AFA and that entire company. So VGA and then CGC Comics, who we all know in comic books, is going to be coming out. I'm hoping before end of this year. I'm hoping sooner than that. And they're going to be grading video games also.
Okay.
And with VGA, they grade video games on a 0 to 100 scale. And they don't designate a complete in box game as complete in box. They call it qualified. And I think that makes it really confusing for some people. When Weta came on scene a few years ago, they adapted the 0 to 10 grading scale, which I think was really smart, right? Because we all get that scale.
Yeah.
And they separated the box on sealed games anyways. They separated the actual box condition from the seal condition. And so on a sealed game, you're getting two different grades. You're getting the box grade, which is from a 0 to 10. They don't have like 9, 4, 9, 6. It goes 9, 9, 5, 10.
Okay.
And then your seal can be anywhere from an A++ down to a C. And if it's a C, then it usually has a hole in it. And then they also grade complete in box games, and they separate the box, the cartridge, and the manual. And then they get an overall average grade with that. And you'll see the CIB designation, which I think was a game changer for video games. And I think that that's why they really came front and center more, because people could relate to that grading scale.
That's very detailed. So we're looking at the game itself, the box, the manual.
Yeah.
We all know from playing games as young people that stuff just where did the manual go? I mean,
well, I know no one saved the manual on a complete in box game, right? So if you look, like there's the grade.
Okay. Yeah.
And then that's the seal. And on a complete in box, instead of it saying sealed right here, it would say CIB.
Okay. And so when you send your games in, what are some of the turnaround times to get your items back? Is it tiered based on length of time and all of that, just like anything else?
Yeah, there's different tier levels to submit under. Obviously, when COVID hit, all of the grading companies hit huge backlogs because everyone was home, everyone wanted to grade, and everyone wanted to sell stuff online.
True. Yep.
And so Weta has cleared their backlog. Their turnarounds are anywhere from a few days to, I think they're at 60 days now on their slowest speed.
Okay.
And then, so CGC, I mean, CGC is really pumping comic books out faster now.
So let's talk about this now. What is in the market or amongst collectors or people who are trying to sell? What is the difference between a CGC graded comic and a comic graded by someone else?
Like CBCS?
Yes, there are two major players. What are people who are really familiar with comics in the marketplace? What differences do they say? Because if you ask me about PSA and Beckett on cards, I can kind of break that down, but let's go.
So I am a supporter of Weta. I've been buying and selling their games since kind of they came to market. So I'm still using them to grade my stuff. I think that they're still the industry standard, even though they're the new grading company, because they've come and been a lot more public. They were the first ones to go to auction houses and really come to a mainstream market.
Okay.
So I respect that. And they have the grading scale we can all relate to. Yeah. So I lost you a little bit when you were talking about the difference between Beckett and PSA.
So now let's talk about this. So we have Marvel card, DC card collectors. And then there are also comic book collectors. But I've noticed, and then talking to some people and going to local Comic Cons, that there's somewhat of a gap between both groups.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is, and what do you think could be done to kind of bridge that gap?
So I just think it's two different markets. And, sometimes there's some crossover where people who are completionists want to fill out some of the card side to match the comics they have. But I think another part of it is like those metal cards, especially, are really expensive. And when someone is trying to decide what they want to drop 5, 6 figures on, well, they're going to go to their nostalgia. And not everyone who read comic books when they were younger went out and collected all the cards.
Sure.
So I mean, there's exceptions where like the X-Force one, you got the Deadpool rookie card in the poly bag with it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always going to be some exceptions, but I don't know how you bridge that gap.
It's difficult. I'll kind of break it down to some people. I've asked them, those who like to see Spider-Man on something, and those who want to read about Peter Parker and go through his journey with villains and what he's dealing with inside.
Yeah.
Being a young person now with superpowers and what's happening in his family. That person who wants to dive into that is probably not the person looking at a card.
Yeah, so true.
And then we talk about cover art. Like I get caught up in the cover art all the time. It's like
me too.
You could take those graded comics back there and hang them on the wall.
Oh
and
yeah,
it's a beautiful mural of history of America and what was going on. I mean, this is a creation. Like we watched the movie Black Panther, but when Stan Lee created the character of Black Panther, what went into that is like huge at the time, controversial at the time.
Yeah.
Most business people probably wouldn't even done it. So when you think about certain characters and what's happening along the way, how instrumental they were,
huge.
You might not look at a card for that.
And like you said, it's history, right? Mm-hmm. Like that is actual history that was going on in the country at that time.
True. Why is there a big, to me, Marvel characters are relatable. They have problems or they have opportunities in their lives that we all can relate to. DC characters, not so much. I can't really grab hold of Superman struggling with kryptonite. I can't.
Right.
It doesn't really get me like this stuff over here. But I know Stan Lee.
Look at Peter Parker, right?
There you go. Stan Lee was a person who historically, before he got involved in Marvel, wrote realistic stories about human beings. And people thought it was crazy. Like, you're going to take that kind of narrative and put it into a character's life that's wearing a costume? So this is what Marvel at first had problems. People were not accepting that. I always take that story as if you're doing something and people don't really understand what you're doing and your thought pattern may be futuristic on how you're approaching it right now, just go back and watch the documentary on Marvel. And there are a lot of times that they thought they would have no job. They come in, Stan Lee was talking about he come in, didn't know the lights would be on, but he's still doing this thing. And now we have something that is special and characters that are special because certain things were put into those characters that were different. DC was primarily created for younger readers.
Well, and DC got really dark, but I think another thing that Marvel really did when they started making movies was really casting well. Like they took these actors and they turned them into these characters. True. Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. Like they became one. And I think that that's why we've lost some of them in the last few years, because they became so defined by that character that they couldn't go out and do other jobs because, well, that's Wolverine.
That's right.
That's Thor. Like we're going to lose Chris Hemsworth. And I have a Journey 83 back there signed by him and Stan Lee.
Oh, wow.
But they become these characters and people are drawn to that. I mean, and I think the other thing with DC is they're kind of boring. The covers are not as good. The villains are not as good.
That's true.
And we get Mr. Freeze. Well, in Marvel, we have Sandman.
Yeah. And Sandman has a complex story of his background, his family, his children, his wife. There's texture there. There's layers of why is he the way he is. There's a story there. It's not just a beast running around screaming.
Right. So I think that that's a huge difference.
Even if you go back to the Incredible Hulk, when Banner first became the Hulk, and people don't really get into why the Hulk was screaming and raging all the time. There's a story there. Like, if Marvel got into the nuances, nothing just happened because it was just happening.
There was always a reason.
There's always a reason there.
Yeah.
Which makes it wonderful.
And they did great storytelling.
That's right. Folks forget that Blade set the tone for the Marvel movies. Blade did.
Yeah, I feel that. I respect that.
Blade 1 and 2 are special.
Yeah. I gotta go back and rewatch them. I have not watched the Blade movies.
Well, they are special. They are special.
Yeah.
3 was a little shaky. 1 and 2, dynamite.
Yeah.